Hello and welcome to another episode of the Bravo Outsider Podcast. I'm Craig Midwinter, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host Dylan. Dylan, are you wearing lingerie for daddy?
No, I'm actually dressed like a dork wearing a suit. Not just because of what we're going to be talking about today. Maybe partially, but mostly because I wanted to show off my Florida Panthers tie. Let's go Cardiac Cats. Yeah, second round.
Oh,
it's doing
yeah.
great. And having a glass of Romulan ale over here.
Oh,
known
very nice.
as Rev. my favorite garbage cooler. Because I like to bring props because I apparently don't know what a podcast is.
Well, each week we're joined by an outsider to get their takes on the week's episode. This week, joining us from Soy Trek is Comrade Brit.
Reality television, the final frontier. These are the Soyages of the USS Bravo Outsider, our ongoing mission to explore strange new episodes, to seek out new whys and new situations, to boldly watch what this they them has not watched before.
Excellent.
I teared up a little. That was emotional.
Thank you. That music always gets me. It's hits you right in the feels.
It really is iconic. The music to the intro to Star Trek.
For me, it was just like childhood, like the only good times with my dad, basically.
Well, we were just kind of chatting before things got going, and I was saying there's probably a very small crossover, like intersection of fans that are fans of like Real Housewives and fans of Star Trek. So this is mostly to like indulge me, but
yeah, if there was a Venn diagram, it would just be the room you're sitting in right now. That would be in
I think you might
space.
be surprised because like the first time I had really heard of Real Housewives in like the modern era, I was listening to like my favorite Marxist conspiracy podcast, TrueAnon, and
nice.
They had an entire episode about Real Housewives. And I'm like, really? I guess folks like me like that kind of thing.
Yeah. I've listened to that episode too. It's a great one. Yeah.
It's wonderful. And I'm like, well, okay. I mean, if Liz likes it, it can't be all bad. It's interesting. Especially from like a cultural anthropology perspective, like looking in from the outside, it's like real interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I think like it's definitely like culturally significant for sure, and I think like it's a very like narratively dense experience, which is something that you also get with Star Trek in a very different form. And
yes.
When I was kind of like proposing our discussion topic before we get into it, I was a little bit nervous that it might not be like very fruitful for things to like pull out, and like we might be making a stretch of it. But I was like actually shocked by how many notes and how much like came to mind as I was really mulling over the ideas. So I'm really curious to get your takes. But before we get there, do you want to kind of give a background on kind of your past experience with any sort of reality TV, or if any of these shows were previously on your radar in any respect?
So I'm going to be quite honest. I feel like reality TV in a lot of ways is antithetical to my beliefs, or at least it has been used in antithesis of my beliefs. As a Marxist and as an active IWW member, I am very like pro-union, and historically reality TV has been used to try to, create shows and productions with less union jobs. Because basically on reality TV, the only unionized work usually there is going to be the editor, who is like kind of the powerhouse of the whole thing. But, no unionized writers, no unionized like set designers usually. I don't know, maybe in this, it seems like the production value for this is high enough to where they might have set designers and stuff like that. But, historically, I've just like never watched reality television because, it is kind of inherently pro-capitalist and anti-union. Now, I also say that, like full discretion here, I do like some media that is inherently pro-capitalist and anti-union. Like I'm a big wrestling fan, and I understand one of you is too.
Sean, our previous guest, was,
It was Sean's. Yeah,
yeah.
okay, yeah. Well, yeah, the episode I was listening. So, yeah, I'm in that. Honestly, yeah, it doesn't really reflect my value set, but I'm still into it. But I feel like reality television in general is like a lot of it is like one big ad, you know.
Yeah, I can kind of see where you're coming from there, and I think
Mhm.
like we've got some upcoming discussions that we'll get into it a bit more in later episodes. But I think this is a good opportunity to kind of wade into the territory because there is like a real life example of kind of this reality television being at odds with unions
Mhm.
going on right now with the
Yeah.
writers' strike.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
Mhm.
right. And I thought it
you
was
know,
especially like pertinent now, and I'm like, oh,
Mhm.
that's a weird thing because I was going to kind of bring this up anyway, and then after you invited me, it came up, and I'm like, oh shoot, how am I going to talk about this now? So, but I guess it's more pertinent. So yeah.
yeah, and I mean, I'm sure. Well, I shouldn't like assume, but
Mhm.
I am sure that there are like union positions that kind of make up the gap. I'm sure there's a producers union or something that people that are like filling those storytelling chairs that
Mhm.
would otherwise be filled by writers. They would be in another unionized role
Mhm.
because it's kind of like it's a it's a canvas for like editors and producers more so than it would be writers.
Oh, absolutely.
But
Writers or actors who are also unionized
yeah,
generally. So
yeah, and I doubt there is a reality TV actors union,
there
but there
absolutely is
should
not.
be.
There. Yeah. That would be interesting because I
Yeah.
mean, the thing too is like these people are all very directly benefiting from the exposure that reality television is giving them, especially in a Vanderhouse Rules. Like it's a big ad for all these different little micro companies that they all have, and
For
it's
sure.
interesting.
And
Yeah.
also like they are absolutely workers that need protection, like
Mhm.
by putting themselves out there like more so than even actors because
Right.
they're putting their
Their
true
reputations on the line.
reputations
Yeah.
on the
Yeah. Yeah.
line, and to not have a set of protections in place that
Mhm.
collective bargaining could provide for them.
Yeah.
They definitely should be looking at unionizing, although I think the idea of reality TV personality being a profession is kind of like it's kind of nebulous because if you're on
Right.
like a single season of like Big Brother and then that's it, are
Can you get life
does that
benefits from the
qualify
union?
you?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
right, right.
exactly. So but yeah, I think it's really interesting. I think you also like brought up the point of the like the political lens that
Mhm.
we view reality TV through, and that's another discussion that I want to get into in a future episode. But since you brought it up, I think like obviously the cast members, especially on the Real Housewives, where they're
Mhm.
very affluent, I think they typically would probably lean pretty like conservative. But
Mhm.
I kind of find that the lens that these shows are presented through doesn't lean as far right. Like,
No,
I
definitely no.
mean,
The creatives behind this obviously don't. I don't think they necessarily have any sort of political agenda. Definitely not as much as the people on the show seem to sometimes have.
yeah, I mean, I think that they are at least catering to the politics of the general audience of these shows,
It is
which
very accessible. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, which like it skews female, um it skews gay, and
Hmm.
like it skews to demographics that would typically be left of center, not
Yeah,
not
absolutely.
super like far left
Hmm.
in, but um traditionally more left than right.
Yeah, like suburban white. Yeah, gay and women. Yeah, definitely for
Yeah.
sure.
Awesome. Well, I want to jump right into our discussion. So, I selected an episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine to
Hmm.
kind of compare and like contrast against Real Housewives and Vanderpump Rules. Just mostly to use that as kind of like a launching point
Hmm.
into a discussion more broadly about Trek, because I think you mentioned in our the conversation that we were having before we got rolling,
Mhm.
it is very interesting to take two seemingly separate pieces of art and try to juxtapose them against each other, and see what comes out of that comparison and what comes out of that exercise. So I'm really excited.
Excellent.
I selected an episode from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, season 6, called "In the Pale Moonlight,"
I
which
mean, I'm
it
gonna be honest. You selected the episode of DS9. Like this is if you want to introduce people to the show and get them to like love the main actor, the captain, like you show them this episode.
Yeah, and so how I kind of like arrived at this, not only is it like an episode that like kind of stands out in my mind as like being a particularly engaging episode of Deep Space Nine, but also I think it bucks a lot of the conventions of Trek in a certain way.
Mhm.
And I think that when I was rewatching it, I was especially like surprised to see certain like structural components in it that really reminded me of Real Housewives.
Mhm.
Before I like take over the conversation with what I've identified, did you want to kind of give your what your perspective of like this exercise was when I announced it?
Um, yeah, sure. Like, so, I thought like, I love taking way too much meaning in everything, and so I thought this was going to be a fun exercise, and it was like, and I watched the DS9 episode last night, like right after I watched Real Housewives and Vanderhouse Rules, and it was I'm sorry, is it Vanderhouse or Vanderpump? For some,
Vanderpump.
if
Yeah.
I've been calling it Vanderhouse because I'm just thinking House Rules for some reason. Sorry, Vanderpump Rules. But like so this DS9 episode, like the perspective of the entire thing is done from one person's perspective, and that's like completely juxtaposed to the reality thing where it's just a bunch an ensemble, and it's always showing their different perspectives kind of, but just only in the situations that they're in, and then
Yeah.
kind of like how they're talked about in other situations, which is interesting, and it has similarities therein where you know um in the DS9 episode, it just follows the captain, Benjamin Sisko, as he goes around. And I don't know if you noticed, but every single scene has Benjamin Sisko in it
Yeah.
in the episode. And so it's just him making a bunch of deals, dropping hot gossip, telling people to shut up or I'll kill you. Stuff like that, which is, a lot of what like the Real Housewives is, but to a lesser degree.
Yeah.
More like throwing drinks and things like that. But yeah, I don't know what was your perspective on why did you choose that episode in particular? Because I assumed you've seen it before.
Yeah, I have. And actually, so what kind of got me thinking about this episode in particular? I was going through an exercise of one thing that I was planning on asking you was to if there were any like characters in these shows that you kind of correlated to any of the characters on Star Trek, and I was going through that mental exercise for myself,
Mm-hmm.
and it was actually like very challenging because I was, there was one person that
Mm-hmm.
on Vanderpump Rules that stood out to me like right away as a direct like comparison. We'll get into that when we get there.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone else, I was like, oh, it's Garrick. Oh, it's Garrick. It's Garrick. Everyone is a Garrick.
Garrick is just he's such a like a gay catty bitch, and I love him. Everything about. I mean, I feel something deep in my soul for Garrick. I feel like I
Oh yeah,
am a Garrick in a way, in a much more benevolent way. I don't like kill people or anything like that, but like, I love uh, uh, always having planned ahead of other people. And that's what the episode is kind of about. Benjamin Sisko the captain, tries to do a plan to give their side an upper hand in a war.
yeah,
But his plan fails miserably. And he had made the plan with Garrick in the first place. And then Garrick turns around and had another plan all along to do violence and achieve the same goal. And he does it in a much worse way, but both of them were planning on doing a war crime. Garrick just does the slightly worse war crime, and Benjamin Sisko is like, God damn it! And he punches him a couple times. It's it's really fun. It's a much more exaggerated version of, and obviously it's sci-fi, so there's a lot of allegory to real life there.
Yeah.
But it's very exaggerated in every way. But you know, the one character that I kept on thinking about when watching Real Housewives was Senator Vreenak, the Romulan senator,
Oh, okay.
because his side is winning the war at that point, the
Yeah.
side he's allied with, and he just comes on board and he is just malicious and just like dissing Benjamin Sisko the entire time, and just
Yeah.
like
Very like
dropping
smug.
shade.
Yeah.
He's dropping. He's the shadiest bitch, and he's like every single one of the women, but like two on Real Housewives from the episode we saw.
Yeah. I think like when I was watching this episode, just like story wise,
Mm-hmm.
and I think this would probably be hard to pick up on without like a lot of context on Real Housewives or these types of shows, because
Absolutely.
it didn't like seem like I wouldn't be able to tie this episode of Deep Space Nine directly to an episode of Real Housewives. But I think that I could tie this episode of Deep Space Nine to like a season
Mm-hmm.
of Real Housewives. Like this is like the dynamics that we see play out over the course of this episode of Deep Space Nine
Mm-hmm.
is very similar to something that we constantly see on Housewives, where someone has a plan and does it like has a plan on how they are going to like use a piece of information or like get to whatever their end goal is,
Mm-hmm.
and they put it into action, and they have to recruit like some other member of the cast in order to like help them or just bounce ideas off of.
Mm-hmm.
And you see the snowball effect of putting that plan into place and bringing other people in, and just how things have a bit of a domino effect. And that's exactly what happens in this Deep Space Nine episode, and that's something that you see almost every season of Real Housewives. So I thought it was like particularly fitting. And then when I was rewatching it for this, I had forgotten that the way that this is structured is interspersed with Cisco giving his
Yes.
his personal log,
Yeah, which is so reality television. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
a confessional.
confession booth. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
exactly like
Great point.
a confessional,
Great point.
and
Yeah.
it was really interesting to see that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like that, Star Trek always is, or almost always is, like prefaced with, captain's log or other, like some other officer's log. Like
Mm-hmm.
every episode is actually like framed as, someone's perspective, and it's typically like a senior Starfleet officer.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So like you can interpret every episode as being like from a character's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think that's the same sort of mechanism that Real Housewives uses when they are trying to frame certain pieces of a scene or story
Yeah,
in perspective. They will use that Housewives, either their title card or giving their confessionals, and
Mm-hmm.
and do that same sort of storytelling mechanism.
Yeah, and now that I think about it, like they do have like a constant narrative that basically they open up with and then they execute at the end. Like in Housewives, it was the bridal shower. In Vanderpump Rules, I mean, the whole thing basically, in one way or another, was about Rachel or Rochelle and Tom and their whole "did they, don't they," which Tom did. I know for a fact. It has to. He's a terrible, terrible, terrible liar. Terrible liar. Worst liar ever.
So bad.
Also,
Yeah.
gayest mustache I've ever seen. It's fabulous, but bisexual vibes.
So he shaved it off live on, well, I guess not live, but during a recording of Howie Mandel's podcast where
Did
he
he-
gave.
Do you like do it to go back in the closet or something? Like,
So you're spot on. He was sleeping with Raquel.
excellent.
Yeah, and
Excellent.
it blew
I mean,
up
not
off.
excellent. That's
Yeah.
bad because
No,
I feel
it's
like
it's
him
excellent.
Oh, is it okay? Good. Oh,
well, I mean,
isn't-
it's
isn't he,
excellent for like fans of
40
chaos.
something, and she's like 20 something.
Yeah,
There's
well,
a
we see her
significant age
turn
gap.
like 28 or something like that, and I think she's 40.
Yeah, she was
So,
turning
yeah.
28 in that episode. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But yeah, it blew up off camera, and so they had to get all the like production teams rolling again in order to capture the fallout, so they could tack it on to the end of this.
Oh, of
this
course,
season.
of course. Gotta.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what this whole episode's about. You got to pay off with that Chekhov's gun there.
Yeah, for sure. Before we move into Vanderpump Rules, Dylan, you're like a bit more of a like Star Trek outsider, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
I mean, I love the original series. I watch the original series all the time. Like,
Okay.
I will constantly just revisit those episodes. Like, for me, I don't watch a ton of scripted TV, but that's my favorite show. Like for me, you just got a show with a bunch of cool actors wearing like really dope, brightly colored mod outfits, and they're visiting a planet where there's going to be like some classically trained theatrical actor wearing a toga, walking among like foam rubber spires and Greco-Roman columns, and he'll be like vanquished and turned into a glittering slime creature because somebody pointed out a flaw in his aesthetics or something. That's like the greatest thing that TV. The episode will be called like "Who Has Seen the Hands of Time" or something like that. That shit rules. I love that stuff so much. Yeah. So I never really like went beyond that. This is the first time I've ever watched an episode of Deep Space Nine. Was just for this.
Wild. What do you think? What was your impression?
It was cool. It was cool. I liked it for sure. I was surprised by how good the cast was. Like, there kept being actors. So they'd be like, "Oh, he's in it." Like you guys were talking about how awesome Garrick is. Yeah, Andrew Robinson. Andrew Robinson rules. Such a good actor.
If you haven't seen him play Liberace in, I think, the 1987 made-for-TV film, it's available on like YouTube.
That sounds like great casting.
Incredible.
Oh, I can picture it.
Incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. I mostly think of like Hellraiser, Dirty Harry, where he's the bad guy. Yeah, so just a very talented actor, even though he's wearing that alligator face. Still doing good.
I think that like Trek has a very it has a way of like latching on to actors that might not be like into Trek when they get cast, and I think he's a very iconic example of it because he's like he wrote one of the Star Trek novels, like one of the most acclaimed
Thread in Time.
Thread in Time or something like that. So like he is Star Trek royalty, and I agree that like Garrick is like one of the best characters in Trek. And to like kind of get into characters in Trek versus Housewives, I think like that's one of the things that are kind of at odds between these two series. Like, I think like all the characters on Trek, for the most part, they're modeled after kind of like pulpy heroes and like archetypes within that vein that they will use to like Star Trek is just like a series of like morality plays that play out like week after week. And so they will like plug these characters in. They will like choose whatever theme they want to explore in this story and like create some alien or some like planet or some like conflict that will, they can use as a proxy for that idea that they want to explore, and then like crank it up to 11 and, play it out. At least like that's where I think like Trek really excels. But a lot of the characters, especially like within Starfleet, are very rooted on the like the good side of the like good versus evil spectrum. They don't oscillate very much. They certainly like if they do kind of move their position, they don't really it's not kind of like a long progression in most cases from one side to the next. It kind of resets at the end of the episode, or the arc, the storytelling arc. And that's one of the things that like stands out about Garrick is he is a character that is very like nebulous, and like he oscillates on the fence. Like, is he good? Is he bad? Like, there's so many like questions
He's
surrounding
neither
him.
good nor bad. He's effective.
Yeah. And I think that that's like, that is a housewife, like a good like housewife. And I think
Mhm.
all the characters that you see on Housewives, they're never really rooted in like in good or bad. They
Mhm.
are
Mhm.
constantly like fluctuating between like good guy and bad guy. And if you're watching for long enough, if you are like rooting for a particular housewife,
Mhm.
you will see them like become the villain and then go back to the hero. And like, I mean, there's a couple that will just like be firmly like rooted in like villainy and just
Mhm.
like stay there. But for the most part, they fluctuate through the gray area. And um, so that's why he kind of stood out to me as like a very, like, I wanted to select an episode that had Garrick in it, because
Mhm.
I think he's the most interesting character
He
to
is.
kind of explore within
Mhm.
this comparison context.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the things that really jumped out for me too, compared to like original Trek, which they often have cool moral puzzles at the heart of an episode,
Mhm.
but like the crew of the Enterprise in the original show is like a well-oiled machine. They're all kind of on the same page.
Mhm.
You pretty much always see them like being in line, like following commands and stuff. They're like always shown as a good team that knows how to act properly. But in the ship in Deep Space Nine, it really struck me how there's like this atmosphere of suspicion and paranoia, and like the captain keeps consulting with these people who he doesn't really like very much and doesn't know how
Mhm.
much he can trust them, and they don't know how much they can trust the captain. And that kind of that weird atmosphere of not really knowing if people have secret agendas, or if they do have secret agendas, if you can still work with them anyways. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
um that moral murkiness, which, like you said, Craig, that's one of the things I love most about reality TV. As much as the showrunners may want to have heroes and villains, it all becomes a murky human playing field, where
Mhm.
people aren't like just good guys and bad guys, and it's all everybody is. A lot of these people seem really shitty, but you're also like really love them because you recognize their like normal human emotions, and how hard it is to try to put them in a box and put them on a straight track like a bead on a wire and be like, you're going to this point. But no, they start doing something else because they're people, and people are just gonna act in unexpected ways. And I like the way that like moral readings kind of get blown up in a way. Not blown up. You could still very much put a moral lens on any housewives show, but trying to put a character in a box is going to be a fool's errand unless you're really trying to force it.
And
Yeah, I think like that atmosphere that you're talking about, the like sort of the paranoia that you see within this episode of Deep Space Nine, and you see it like a lot in Deep Space Nine. They really set like Voyager up to like be able to excel there, but then they just like they dropped it so quickly. Like the idea for Voyager is like you've got a crew of like Bajoran freedom fighters that have to merge with a Starfleet crew, and uh, there should be like a lot more tension. Like you see it,
mhm.
you see them set it up for it,
There
and then
is
it's
tension in the
dropped.
first season, but they just totally
Yeah.
cool it off within like the first half. And sorry to correct you, but it's Maquis Freedom Fighters. That I just
Oh yeah.
compulsion. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, they really did drop the ball on Voyager. But I think all of that, like the moral grayness and everything, really kind of may be why like DS9 is by far the favorite Star Trek of Marxist, and apparently a lot of Marxists actually like reality television too, is because there is like this moral grayness that recognizes the fact that people and things can always change based on their material conditions. There is no
Mm.
such thing necessarily as a moral good or a moral bad. There's just what can help more people, basically.
Yeah, and I think this episode in particular, like you do see characters change on on Deep Space Nine, at least
Mhm.
specifically like Cisco. We see this episode
Cisco, yeah,
as
he's
like a
circling the drain.
culmination of like him him learning from his experiences and evolving, which is something that you see in Housewives and reality TV in general a
Hmm.
lot. Like their past experiences play a real have a real impact on how they deal with future situations because they're real people, and as constructed as the situations are, they are still responding as real people.
Hmm.
And you see that in this episode of Cisco, where he's like, you know what, I can live with like what I've done.
Hmm.
And I contrast this with kind of the storyline that Picard has in the Next Generation, where he gets assimilated. You see him like affected by it,
Hmm.
but only in isolated like situations that play for the story. It's not as like deeply of like a reorientation as
Hmm.
Cisco seems to experience.
Absolutely, totally agree.
Cool. Well, let's jump into Vanderpump Rules.
All right.
First off, did anyone on this cast remind you of any Star Trek characters?
Oh, I actually didn't really write any of that down. As we're going through it, I might start making some comparisons. I mean, in general, uh, everyone seems just a little bit Romulan because they all seem pretty backstabby, which is the big Romulan trait.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a couple Ferengis here and there. Um, some of the worst fillers do look a little like the Ferengi cheekbones. So, um, yeah, uh, yeah, not in general. Yeah, they were just an interesting cast of characters, though. I generally liked this show a lot better than Real Housewives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's something that we've been hearing a lot, and this is a particularly like great season of Vanderpump Rules,
Hmm.
and uh, New Jersey has been great, but I think like it really requires a lot of like context in order
Yeah,
to
yeah. I feel like there's
appreciate it.
too
So
many characters almost, or just like it's just an overload. Especially watching an episode for the first time, I don't feel like I get to know anybody by the end of the episode. Whereas in Vanderpump Rules, I got at least one villain and one person who I don't love, but I think she's kind of a baddie, so I'm down with her.
is it Raquel?
It's actually Lala or
Oh,
Lala.
okay.
Yeah. She's very. She seems honest, at least.
Yeah, Lala is one of Dylan's like very noted favorites.
Excellent.
I like
Noted.
appreciate Lala like quite a bit as well. The
Yeah,
reason
I've been defending her a lot this season, even though she's had some terrible episodes, which I've pointed out. But
Hmm.
you get two sides of her. She can be extremely self-serving and say
Hmm.
terrible things, but can also be like a straight dealing, real friend who like
Yes.
really stands up for the other women in her life. So, like all these characters, she's got a lot of complexity, but I generally like her.
the reason I brought up Raquel is because she was the person that I immediately identified a proxy for in Star
Ooh.
Trek,
Who's that?
and Barclay. I thought like
Oh,
this is Barclay
interesting.
because like
Wait. Slow it down for the non-Trekkies over
Okay,
here. Which one's Barkley?
Reginald Barclay. He was on TNG and Voyager.
yeah.
Oh, but he wasn't in the episode we watched.
No, he
No, no,
wasn't.
no.
All
He
right.
he starts out on TNG as a very socially awkward guy, probably like autistic code in a way, like has a
Mm.
very hard time like dealing with social interactions and stuff. And they have some stuff about that. But then by the time he gets to Voyager, he like becomes like a real like player in the series and like helps Voyager communicate with Earth before they get home, which helps him a lot. And it's a nice story arc for him. But so where do you think Raquel is in his story arc right now?
So I think like Raquel is she's on a journey kind of like finding out who Raquel is. Like she's
Yeah,
on
she's
this
still
like
young.
journey
Yeah,
of
yeah.
self discovery
Mhm.
and like trying to work out that. And I think
That was a
like
huge part of this episode, right? It was almost like the culmination of that storyline in a way, I think.
Yeah.
yeah, and one of the things about like Barkley is like when he's first introduced, like he's like very underestimated
Mhm.
and like really at like kind of a yeah, like you said, like he's really awkward and kind of reaches like a turning point in his life. And um I think he still never really fits in by the end of Voyager. Like, even when he's like, you know, he has like a strong hand in like getting Voyager home. He's still like battling his own demons, and
He is. I mean, he has like friends though. He has like a friend in Deanna, and he has the respect of his peers at that point too. Whereas before, he was really struggling, especially on the Enterprise and TNG. Like, you never saw an episode with Barclay where he was like, you know, really doing well for himself.
Yeah, and you could still see him like potentially like taking a heel turn. You know, maybe after Voyager ends, he becomes a conservative radio personality or something like that.
For those who don't know, the actor did.
Yeah,
Dwight. That's BM those.
Yeah, Dwight Schultz or whatever.
But yeah, like this is something that we see with Raquel, like taking an off-camera like heel turn as well. Like, she's having this episode or this like arc where she's like kind of finding herself. There's still like questions about her, but she's like coming into her own with a friend group, and I just saw so many parallels between her story and like Barclay, both like within the, you know, the Trek world as well as in the meta too.
So, I'm sorry, can I ask a couple questions here? Maybe just one. So do they all know each other from like a restaurant or something? What's like, so I get the general impression that a couple of them work at this Sir place or whatever.
Yeah, so when this started, it was actually a spin-off of Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. They like did a backdoor pilot, so there was a 2-hour long episode of Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, which was actually, you know, an hour of Real Housewives of Beverly Hills and then an hour of the first episode of Vanderpump Rules. And Sir is the like restaurant of Lisa Vanderpump, who you see a little bit in this episode.
The name Sir, by the way, just to like context for how fucking tacky these places are, it stands for Sexy Unique Restaurant.
Oh my god.
They look like the worst restaurants
that
ever.
Is oh my god, that is a sequin dress of a restaurant. Yikes.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, she was a Real Housewife of Beverly Hills at that point, and that's kind of how it tied in. And Sheena, who you saw in this, was kind of the character that got followed in like from Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, because she was actually sleeping with one of the other Housewives of Beverly Hills husbands, and it just kind of bled into this.
I actually didn't know 10 years story.
Yeah, 10 years later, here we are, or I guess more than 10 because they took a year off, but yeah, so they all like started as servers, SURvers, or like bartenders at this restaurant, and for the most part, it's a lot of the like, if not the first season cast, but like the first like 3-4 seasons worth of cast members that are still on the show.
Wild. All right. That's actually the only question I had. Okay. Yeah. Answers most of my questions.
What sort of highlights did you have from watching this?
I'm going to be honest. I have like about 1,500 words of notes here. It's pretty dense. So, I mean, it starts out, the first thing that popped me off was the guy, they go to a farm and the guy says, "This is like a real life Animal Crossing." Which is just one of the most detached things I've heard in my life. Like, this guy never thought about where eggs might come from, and he thinks they come from talking animals in a video game, apparently.
Though I do think he was kind of saying that to Raquel, like condescendingly, just kind of being like, "Raquel, it's just like that game you like."
Perhaps. Yeah, there was no laughs though, so I'm like,
yeah,
huh. Yeah. Let's see. Tom's friend, I don't know what his name is. He has the world's worst goatee. Absolutely.
Oh, his name is also Tom.
He's also Tom. Okay.
Who has like an extremely minute goatee, you mean? Like,
it's like under his chin.
Under his, it's hiding.
Like, yeah, exactly. It's like in hiding. And I'm like, what? Why would
I would hide if I was that goatee too.
Yeah, me too. Like, yeah, it's, yeah. Let's see, what else? I'm anti-yurt.
Yeah.
I'm just anti-yurt. They sleep in tents.
Okay, I was trying to figure out what this place was. This was very confusing. We've seen
glamping,
on
Craig.
Yes.
But it wasn't like glamorous at all. It was weird. It like, I don't know. We've seen a lot of these like weird places that like Housewives go to, or on Vanderpump Rules, like that are set up for like they're just like rich people isolated experiences that you can have if you got lots of money. But
Mm.
this one was like it was not glamorous at all. It looked
No,
like it was like thrown together by the production staff
it could
like
have
very
been.
quickly.
It looks like they had like there's some guys who got some land like out in the desert,
Yeah.
like lots of people do, right? And it's
Yeah.
like it looks like in the middle of their like whole nomad land setup, they put an IKEA showroom like just right there.
Yeah,
And,
yeah, 100%.
And it's just there to be like an Instagram backdrop, basically. I think.
Yeah,
Having said that, I think that looked pretty fun. It looked like they're having a good time, but I thought it was a ridiculous fucking thing. Like it's just so silly, just like this very like staged setup of like houseplants and like pseudo Nordic furniture, like next to what I presume is like an off-screen trailer park. It's just really hilarious.
Let's see. I kind of liked Lala immediately, at least when she admitted to having sex with was it Ariana or someone in the back of a car?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We just love that. Anyone who's that curt, just brings that up. I love him immediately.
This was a really good episode for Lala, I found, and I think she is getting the edit as being like the one who is like taking on the detective role in the Scandival, which is how the
Scandival,
like this is
okay,
how the
I
like
get that.
controversy has been labeled. But yeah, I love that we got her kind of framing the walking back, like the rewind and fast forward segments of how this story started kind of like breaking within their friend group, or how the speculation kind of started disseminating, and it like immediately rewinds to that like shot of Ken like shuffling in and like giving that
okay, we got to talk about Ken.
Yeah.
Ken is the drunkest old British man.
I think
he's a drunk old rich man.
I think it's
amazing.
just Alzheimer's, man. I think it's just Alzheimer's.
No, he's like he is gin red. That is the color of his skin at this point.
True, yeah.
This is actually like more life that we've seen out of Ken in years. Like his eyes are
he
like
just has some
popping.
hot goss, and he's like, hey.
So good. Yeah. He just drops a bomb in the middle of the room.
Then
like calls for a dog and shuffles out.
Yeah, that's all he's there for. Yeah, exactly. He just oh my god. Yeah,
I like how like Lisa completely like blows away the context for it, like him walking in and saying, like directing it to Lisa being like, I can't believe that Tom and Raquel spent the night together, like as if he's delivering news to her. But then Katie's like, how does he know that? And Lisa's like, oh well, I told him earlier.
Everyone knows. Like, yeah.
The whole like thing where Lala breaks down the conspiracy was good, like you said, with like In the Hall of the Mountain King playing, and like
that was an interesting choice.
Yeah. Though that was going back to something you said in a previous episode, Craig. That really should have been Kristen's moment if she was still in the show. That would have been. I know you said that like she would be the one like connecting pieces of red yarn on the photos to piece it together, and I'm sure she is doing that just like off camera. She's just in a bar in St. Louis somewhere talking everybody's ear off and like showing them diagrams about it and stuff. But putting Lala in that position felt like a little shoot in. Like it felt like an obviously more recent voiceover that they recorded that obviously wasn't from a confessional because they didn't show any shots of it. But it was a fun moment. That I guess like in Kristen's absence, why not have Lala be the Columbo piecing it together?
I like that we got it.
Ken should have just had the overcoat on and have a cigar and just and a little dog in the other hand, and just been going around being like, just one more thing.
I feel like it got like an updated kind of look to the package versus what we would have got for Kristen, because like you said, with Kristen we would have got her like frantically like smoking a cigarette and like pointing at the yarn on the wall, but then we got kind of this more updated we got the VHS fast forward, like an allusion to like kind of the 90s packaging, and we got her like voice injected, like there was a rewind segment that was just to like highlight how dope of a party the Labor Day party was.
Right.
Yeah, and I really liked the editing that they were doing. At first, it was a little hard to follow with the like the rewind and like the security tape footage type stuff, and then like the kind of flashback, because they did a lot of like little different tricks. And I imagine like you get more and more used to it. But having not watched reality television, I am not used to like scenes and cuts going like this fast, and unless I'm watching like
Oh yeah.
an action movie or something like that. So yeah, it's super interesting, but eventually I think by the end of the episode I got used to it, and I decided I liked it. So yeah, it's interesting. What else do I got here? Let's see. Oh yeah, the Sir restaurant. So Lisa, she's the one wearing that pink dress, right? Because we need to talk about that pink dress. It is hideous. Like, I don't know what happened with that thing, but and she like has the audacity to say Raquel comes in looking like a bag of shit. Like, she looks like a pink bag of very specific shit. So
yeah,
I
Lisa has like very questionable taste. Like, I don't know, anytime you see Lisa dressed up, like you can it's like one of those looks that you can kind of like smell the perfume, like the old lady perfume.
Too floral. Yeah.
Like
bergamot forward. Like, she only buys like Chanel and stuff that smells exactly like it.
I think like there's on Housewives there's like a few places where you get like you get treated to all your senses, and like Lisa is a housewife you can smell. There's also like Julia on Real Housewives of Miami, like her house, you can smell that house because there's just animals everywhere.
Oh no.
Oh no. But yeah, just like Lisa is a very like sensory experience, and
a little too much for me, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, I like more muted tones, and that one's loud. I liked when James and Tom got high as fuck together. I wish I could have seen that whole scene. It looked like it was in another episode.
Yeah, we only got a couple seconds of that, unfortunately.
Yeah. What it wasn't in another.
They were
episode,
saying they were like in a professional weed lounge or something like that. I'm like, I want to see a professional weed lounge. We don't have those here. Those aren't legal where I'm from. So, yeah. So then here I wrote I don't know, probably like 200 words about Tom and Raquel and my theories on it, but you already cleared that up.
Oh, I want to hear the theories though.
I mean, so Tom and Raquel have obviously like been fucking for a while. Tom, he's trying to get into the restaurant business, right? Something like that. Trying to get his own restaurant.
So yeah, he's actually, him and the other Tom are like part owners of a bar called Tom with Lisa Vanderpump. They're trying
okay,
to get...
because I took a note of the Tom shirt, because I was like, why is he wearing a fucking shirt with his own name on it twice? What is up with this asshole? But that makes more sense then.
And then him and like Schwartz are trying to start another like bar restaurant, because they're just like, they've got a fraction of ownership in Tom. They want to be like independent of Lisa Vanderpump's like restaurant empire,
right?
Which seems to be crumbling, by the way. But
interesting.
They want to kind of separate themselves.
Yeah, that makes sense, because what she's doing is some weird bougie shit that So like a thing I wrote here is like Tom, going into the restaurant business for his own. Everyone fails in the restaurant business. It's the highest failure rate of any sole proprietor or partnership business that you can ever get into. And so if you're, especially at that age, with experience in the restaurant industry, if you're starting a new restaurant, you're basically doing it for one reason. If you're a person like Tom, and that's to fuck the waitresses. And Raquel is a waitress, and so he's got a certain type, which is younger waitresses. I'm sure you can probably attest to that. I haven't watched the series, but I assume he's had more than a few. So yeah, immediately. And also there was one confession here where he talked about him and Raquel, and just the way his eyes were, I'm like, this dude's fucking lying. Yeah. It's so obvious.
Yeah. And also the conversation towards the end of the episode that he has with Lala and Ariana,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
you know Lala is doing the cop bit where she's trying like holding him to the story and
Mhm.
interrogating him in front of Ariana. Like he's so bad at
He's
lying.
terrible at lying.
He's so cooked.
Yeah.
My favorite moment of like just how cooked he is that like Ariana is kind of like talking to it, but she's not raising her voice, she's not grilling him, but she's like asking the questions, and he's just like, you know, tripping over his own feet. And I just love at one point where she just kind of like, you know, they've been partners for a really long time. At one point, she just kind of reaches out and like wipes something off his chin, and it's such like a gesture that like a mother would do to a lying little child. Like it's just so like you know, I'm not getting
like,
angry
I need
right
to
now,
fix
but
you.
but like I'm in control here, and I know that you're just being an idiot. Like,
yeah,
I just love that little moment.
Yeah, I think all through this episode we see examples of like Tom Sandoval being a very like shitty liar, or like dealing with lies very like shittily, because even when they're glamping and he is kind of recapping what happened that night with like Raquel staying over, he is like already told Brock that that Raquel dipped out, and that's the word that we hear like a whole bunch of times.
He loves trying to hide behind the potential ambiguity in the term dipped out.
Yeah.
You know, trying to like imply that she left, but then just being like, no, I used dipped out to mean went to sleep in another room. Like just like loves using a term that's not specific.
Yeah, dipped out could mean going to sleep there with him. Like dipping out has a lot of meanings.
He keeps doubling down on that term because he knows that he can kind of sort of hide behind the ambiguity, but it doesn't work.
He's a 40-year-old man. How long has he been doing this? This is ridiculous. It's like,
yeah, like he's a 40-year-old man and a 10-year reality TV veteran.
Jesus,
like he should be way better at this.
He should just become. He should have an open relationship, because clearly he wants the freedom to do that, or he just like hasn't found the right partner. And clearly he's also bisexual, in my opinion, but you know.
I think that's something that like a lot of people have kind of like at least like projected on Tom, and I'm wondering
I think
where
I mean, I was going to say, I think both Tam Sandoval and Ariana are bisexual to a certain degree. Like, and Ariana has had relations with other women. Like, that Ariana, came up this episode. And Tom Sandoval isn't necessarily that closeted in the sense that he will like make comments about like checking out guys and stuff. I know a lot of straight guys do that too, like just as a gag. Yeah. But you know, I think he's kind of it's also like they're in a West Hollywood world where like it's like more in their area. I think it's a little easier to lean into being like not totally straight all the time. You feel less like you're forced to be straight all the time, maybe if you live in like West Hollywood or something. Fair. So they can like kind of explore that a little bit more. But it's not like he's never been like, I don't think he's ever said like I'm bisexual. I don't think he's ever like identified that way on camera.
I'm going to say if he's still around for season 13, that's when it's going to finally drop. He's going to find the right guy. Trust me.
Yeah, maybe Raquel will bring someone in, and they can explore that.
Hell yeah, we'd love to see it. Let's see. Schwartz is a real piece of shit. Even though I know what I know about Raquel now, him coming in and saying that she has a type, which is taken men. That's some real shitty shade to be throwing in public to someone, especially when there's like, active rumors. Come on, man.
I think the way that he like put this out there was like really creative by his standards. Like she bit her lip. She's got like a taste for blood, so watch out.
Yeah, and the way he brought it up too, which I thought was extra shitty, to be honest, was he said, "I don't want to kill the vibe, but," which is like I don't want to be racist, but it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, he wanted to kill the vibe. He knew exactly what he was doing. So Schwartz, big piece of shit. And then the next thing though that I loved is when Raquel wasn't invited to the party, and so Schwartz says, "You can be my date,"
Yeah.
And then she's like, yeah, friend date.
Yeah.
And then you can see the life drain out of his face. I loved that moment. It's so good. And then the scene after that, he spends like the entire scene just staring at the fire, just like staring into the middle distance, just like shaking his head, like it was never gonna happen. It's beautiful, beautiful.
This is
That's
kind
what
of
fires
like
are for. I love the use of like a fire for that reason, because you see a fire raging and you have an automatic instinct to like reflect on every poor choice you've made.
That's true. Which is why I don't go around fires, because I've made a lot of poor choices.
Also, as someone who's like typically like pretty introverted, it's like a great like reason to not have to engage in like
It's a
conversation.
dog at a party. It's a dog at a party.
It's the TV playing in the corner of the bar.
Let's see what else.
Oh, I'm really interested in this Activia commercial.
Transformers 6, yes.
Let's see, what else do I have here? Raquel. Apparently she tried to become Miss California for like her entire life, but she aged out at 28. Is that when you age out
she
of
is
being attractive?
Yeah.
According
to Donald Trump set the rules for
that's true. That's very true. I wrote a big screed here about beauty pageants, but I think we might be on the same page there. Donald Trump had one, so that's not a good sign.
But I think it is interesting to kind of like bring up pageants as a contrast to reality TV, like more specifically Housewives, because I think like there is a underrepresented demographic of women on television. Like as soon as you age out of like pageants, you're also like aging out of like being on TV as like an actress for the most part. But like that's when you're in the range of like being a Real Housewife, and it's kind of like a venue for like an underrepresented demographic, because you either see like young women in the 27 and under age category, or like really old ladies on TV. You don't see the demographic that you see on Real Housewives portrayed as like main characters anywhere, really. So it is kind of an interesting a progression for her to age out of like pageantry, and then have her star kind of rise this season on Vanderpump Rules, and ultimately like crash into the earth, but still like rise.
Yeah.
Nice. Let's see. Lala makes a great camel toe joke. Loved that. She's definitely like the funniest person on this episode, if not.
She uses the term "bumping peepees" to her mother.
She did. That was great. I love that too. Like that person I bump peepees with, and I'm like, what, girl? What? Okay. But that was really fun. I think her business is, I think, dumb. I'm not. It seems like kind of a goop, like a whole lifestyle business. Am I right there? Like it's just
she just has a book.
Well, she was selling robes.
She's got a makeup. She's got a makeup
robes and makeup and stuff, because she was taking pictures for robes on this episode, right?
Yeah, I think it was just for her for the makeup, but they were in matching like.
I thought it was. I thought they were selling robes, and in that case, I was like, they're just like drop shipping robes. That's not really real business.
I think like her business has a bit more like validity than Christina Kelly's business, which was the other business that we saw.
Oh, which was in like that was stuff.
It was I don't know. I got like strong pyramid scheme vibes from this. Like
it did seem Avon-ish, like a green Avon kind of thing. Like
and I don't know. I've never been to like one of those like parties or whatever, but just the way she had like set up all the product at the front in this one like closed off section and was like kind of hovering around just gave me those vibes. I'm fortunate enough to not have to like deal with old high school friends like hitting me up for joining their to be their downline or whatever, but that's like what I pictured in my head, just like a scaled up version of it.
Nice. Oh, we didn't talk about James yet, really, except him getting high. James seems like an interesting character. His chin is perfectly dimpled. It's very interesting to look at. I was just couldn't stop staring at that dimple. I don't know how I feel about James.
I don't know how to score this yet, Craig.
Yeah, we're waiting for the verdict on this anxiously.
Okay, yeah. He's I don't know if he's trustworthy or not. We didn't really get to see a ton of him in this episode. He says he's losing his friends, namely Schwartz and Sandoval, which are the two shittiest people on the show, I think.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, maybe that's a good thing.Maybe James is like headed in the right direction.
Yeah, we're seeing growth from James, and
all right, I'll score it for you, Craig.
No, I don't think that this is like particularly like prominent episode for James. We did get a really good like line from him in the confessional, like, yeah, I regret Rachel. It was a like super dope proposal, and I wasted it on you.
Yeah, so about that, so Rochelle, was that a place that he proposed in to Rochelle, or?
So, yeah, kind of.
This is so good.
Okay, yeah, because I get the general impression that he proposed to her, she said no, they broke up. But so also, he's another 40-year-old guy.
Yeah, it was on the like Coachella grounds, which is was a sacred place for their relationship.
That sucks.
But the thing is,
it wasn't from during the beginning. Coachella.
He got those little like balloons, like those get well soon balloons that have letters, and like spelt out like Rochella in the sand.
No.
It was so cringe. It was hilarious.
Yeah. And he spent $15,000 on this proposal.
Wait, yeah, she said yes, but then
they broke up after. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, because his big complaint. Well, whatever. Okay. Yeah, I mean, he seems bitter about that, but he was like an almost 40-year-old guy proposing to a 27-year-old. I don't know what he expected.
Yeah, he's a little younger than some of the other guys, I think, James is, right? Or I'm not too sure what his age is.
Yeah, I think he's about like 30, early 30s.
Oh, never mind then. Okay, I thought for some reason I thought he was one of the 40-year-old guys, but no. Let's see. That's pretty much all I have for this episode. Yeah,
Dylan, how about you?
Stuff.
Yeah, I really liked it. I liked the whole like clapping bit. I thought it was really good. I like the culmination of like the Raquel kind of like trying to self-actualize storyline, which has been like a big through line on this season. Mm-hmm. Just somebody who didn't seem to have much personality, just kind of learning to express herself, and the tension between that and what we know about what's becoming more and more clear that she's been doing behind camera is like really juicy to me, like really really interesting, like character dynamic. And I did think it was kind of sweet how she was getting a lot of support from the people there, which is something that she hasn't really had a lot of yet. Like we've seen earlier episodes where she tried to do like a girls trip with Lala and Katie and Christina, and it just went like really badly. Like they offered her like no emotional support whatsoever.
Yeah, the worst people for her to go on a girls trip with.
Yeah. So that was like her early attempts to try to like establish herself more in the friend group and try to figure out who she is post pageantry have been going really poorly. And then here we've got one where it's just going very well for her, where she is getting a lot of support, obviously a lot of extremely enthusiastic support from Sandoval, who again is like doing a bad job of hiding it, like just like
terrible,
just like jumping up and pumping his fists and kicking the air every time that she says like I'm feeling kind of good.
Looking for drywall to punch.
yeah. Though almost kind of sweet the way that he's like so stoked for her, even though it's like he's being a fucking asshole. And then Ariana being like very very nice to her too. Which is of course kind of a charged moment. Because she's sleeping with her boyfriend, but it is still, regardless of that, is like kind of sweet and nice. And I think that a lot of people will see this and say that it's like it's fake because like there's like a betrayal going on behind the scenes, and that people are lying and stuff. But I don't think that necessarily negates the fact that there is like some like sweet emotional support happening at the same time. I think like Raquel is in a very vulnerable position, and this is like this is probably the kind of thing that she really does need. And I think even though there's like a terrible rot at the core of this friend group, that doesn't preclude them being helpful and supportive to each other too. And I think that's one of the interesting tensions that's going on in this scene. And we get the galaxy light back again, which is great.
Yeah.
I love the image of the galaxy light when they go in the tent and she's beaming out her galaxy light, which has been kind of a totem of her like youthful cringe outlook. And the twist that we get in this time is that while they're all kind of having a bit of a love-in for Raquel showing support for her, we get a camera pan up to the actual night sky, which at least through the camera's lens looks to be pretty much starless, just like a kind of a black void of a night sky. And I like that kind of contrast. They're actually outdoors, sort of.
You can't see the stars like anywhere in SoCal. It's like just too much light pollution.
Yeah. So they've got their own like brightly lit galaxy inside. Like maybe it's kind of fake, and it's like a very like insular and like incestuous friend group, which has like a lot of terrible things going on in it too. But that doesn't mean that it can't have like its own beauty too. It like contrasted to that cold dark void out there on the outside of the tent. So I thought there was a kind of like complexity to that moment that was kind of sweet to me, a little moving. And as well as being sad in a way too.
I think that this galaxy light through line that we're seeing is, when you first brought up like this imagery and the symbolism that we were seeing, I was like, oh, that's a funny coincidence. But now it is very clear that this is like an intentional thing that the editors are doing to like do visual like storytelling using this galaxy light as symbolism. And it's really amazing to see. And I love that reality TV gives a canvas to producers and editors to express a story in this way and find imagery to latch onto and use to tell a story in this way. So yeah, that was a moment that also stood out to me, that we got the galaxy light in the yurt, and I was very stoked to see it and like excited to talk about it. And then I like logged on to Twitter today and I saw a tweet, and it's like, conspiracy theory. Tom Schwartz and Raquel both have this galaxy light. What if Tom Sandoval's using it to control their mind? Like, oh, okay.
Yes. Yeah, that's the shit I want.
All right,
send me that tweet. I want to follow that person.
Beautiful.
That's the great shit. Yeah.
Yeah. Completely unhinged.
Yeah.
Did you have any other highlights?
No, I think we really covered my favorite bits. I did think it was a really good, nice episode that had a lot of depth to it. But yeah, I think we mostly went over the good stuff.
I feel like it was like, it actually had a narrative that I could follow pretty clearly, and like I think almost a point. Whereas in contrast, Real Housewives, I was kind of very lost, to be honest.
Yeah, I could see that.
This episode in particular, which I assume we're getting into a second, the episode of Real Housewives of New Jersey was kind of felt like one of those like interstitial episodes for me, which is like not very narrative.
Right. And I feel like a lot of it was incredibly contextual, and having not watched it before and only like kind of listened to your previous episode, I was still like
yeah, I definitely can get where you're coming from. The one thing we haven't really like talked about in Vanderpump Rules that I wanted to get into a little bit was Christina Kelly's Heartspring event. This was a scene that actually like stood out to me a lot, because I think like Christina Kelly's like thirst for the camera to be around, like it brought everyone in the cast together in like, everyone on Vanderpump Rules as like a reality TV character has gotten like powerful enough to a point where they don't need to invite like everyone to an event that they're having. But Christina Kelly, like, she's not a main cast member, and she's just like kind of like sporadically like showing up.
So
So like
she's the one too whose like grandfather or something just died as well. She seems to be in grieving. Is that?
that's Ariana.
Oh, that was Ariana. Okay, never mind then.
Yeah.
Sorry, I think I got
So
those two
Christina
conflated.
Kelly was the one that is like selling the like face sprays and like
Was it
lip balms
the
and
thing at
stuff
the
like
end?
that.
Or
Yeah, the thing
yeah,
at the
okay,
end.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess Ariana was just okay. I got. I guess I got them conflated because, well, I mean, a lot of these people look the same to me, to be honest.
Yeah.
So, yeah, okay. All right,
Yeah,
gotcha.
I think like I don't know, just the fact that like she needs everyone at this event so that like well, as like a real person in the meta, she wants to like promote her brand. So
Hmm.
when there is that discussion about like, oh, Raquel wasn't invited to this thing, and then they talk about or they joke about like Schwartz bringing Raquel as a date, and then ultimately Sheena ends up like texting Christina like, "Hey, is it okay if Raquel can come?"
Hmm.
And she says yes. And I think like Christina has like the least motivation to like be nice and include Raquel within the social context
Hmm.
of Vanderpump Rules, but like in the meta as someone that wants to get cameras there and like
Hmm.
have her brand like showcased, like yeah, obviously she wants Raquel
Mhm.
there because
Everyone
that
on her
means
side.
like
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
The
everyone's going to
best
be
chance of there
there.
being a scene that'll be prominently featured in the
yeah,
final edit.
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Uh, I will definitely say, like, running my own business, Soy Trek, making merch and stuff. Like, the less of an asshole I am online, the more I sell. Straight up.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just like, I don't know. People are more attracted to, like, if I start a tweet with like, "I love when," and then talk about something in DS9 that I actually hate. Like, people will like it
Yeah.
more than like I hate when and the exact same thing. It doesn't make any sense,
Yeah.
but like, I don't know, people are just like, "Oh, I like the word love better," and and then
Yeah.
it's sarcastic. I get sarcasm, great. It's wild.
But I really loved at this event. Like literally everyone is there, including like Katie's mom is at this party.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I just thought it was interesting that she really set it up so that there would be some sort of confrontation here, and I don't think it speaks to Christina Kelly as like being necessarily a skilled reality TV personality, just like
Hmm.
that she's got enough brains to like finally realize after 10 years being adjacent to this show that oh, if I'm going to leverage this in some way and I've got a bit of a heightened profile this season compared to other seasons, I should invite everyone. And
Yeah.
it did pay off because we got that scene with Lala and Ariana, and
Hmm.
that scene is being like shared around Instagram and TikTok and all of the other spaces where conversation about this show happens.
Hmm.
Um, so I thought that it was kind of an interesting scene, if only to see some evolution of Christina Kelly, who has been a character that is, um, been mostly just a blip on the radar.
Yeah, now that like Raquel's actually been developed and we've actually been able to see some personality from her, I think Christina Kelly has inherited the mantle of being that side character who seems like as deep as a lunch tray and doesn't seem to have anything going on, which is not fair.
Hmm.
Everybody has stuff going on, but like the one who just seems like not telegenetic and like not interesting and just like you say there to like promote her brand. Uh,
So
Yeah.
I'm guessing like Raquel, like both of these people, Christina Kelly and Raquel, are kind of newer cast members to the series.
So Christina Kelly
Hmm.
might have even had an appearance in like season one, but she's never been like a full like main cast member.
Hmm.
Whereas Raquel, she joined like season six is my guess. Maybe season five as James Kennedy's girlfriend, and she's been kind of like this rigid side character, and this is her
Hmm.
first like season really being like a full blown like star of the episode.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, another thing that I wrote down that I loved about this scene was that it looks like Raquel didn't take an Uber to the Heartspring event, but she took the red pill from Morpheus because she came right out of the Matrix.
I loved this outfit. I loved it. Was like 90s. She was wearing like the goth pants.
It was very like late 90s, like very she's got like the whale tail like thong showing.
Yeah. Like I am hitting on her at the goth club 100%.
Yeah.
Like
it was a strong one.
It was very good.
Yeah. The oversized like black jeans. Yeah, great stuff.
Let's move on to Real Housewives of New Jersey. Brit, do you want to give your thoughts or your initial impressions on this?
Initial impressions. I was generally like kind of very confused. The editing is very fast, so I had to do a lot of pausing like I do in Star Trek because I mean that's contextually very dense as well. And there was just like so many context cues, so many characters here that like, I mean, I could follow. I feel like on Vanderpump Rules, there was probably a core, at least in the episode we watched, of maybe 6 to 8 characters that it really focused on. And this, there are, I mean, what, like 8 housewives, and then we also focus on their families. And it was a bit of an information overload for like 43 minutes because essentially we can only spend 5-ish minutes with each family, right? So
yeah,
it was
it was definitely like a there wasn't a lot of narrative. There wasn't like an arc that we see progress through this episode that would be as meaningful as the one that we saw in Vanderpump Rules.
Right. Sure. And I actually feel like this episode didn't really further any sort of story. Obviously, like whatever happened before with the trip to Ireland, which I assume was maybe the llast episode or the one before that, like
it's the previous 3 episodes. Actually,
it obviously progressed a lot of the story because basically the emotional core of this episode is largely like I didn't like what happened in the Irish trip and stuff like that. So I'm like,
this episode was kind of the denouement of the Ireland trip arc. It's kind of just dealing with the aftermath of what happened in Dublin.
Yeah.
So I can understand why jumping in on this episode might feel a little like discombobulating.
Yeah. But I mean, there was stuff and scenes that I liked, and you know, certain little quirks and things that I enjoyed. But like narratively, I felt like this was a much weaker episode than the Vanderpump Rules, and much weaker than In the Pale Moonlight.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think like one thing that I wish we would have seen, because like I guess we got some of it last season or last episode, but we didn't get it very much in this episode, was just like seeing the husbands again, which are like a really like strong part of the, you know, the modern Real Housewives of New Jersey experience. It's they're like kind of like main characters, but we did get one scene between
you get some good
Dolores.
Frank.
Yeah, we got Dolores.
I love
and Frank.
We'll talk about Frank. I love Frank.
Let's talk about Frank. Yeah,
let's talk about Frank. God, 1 sec. Let me find my Frank paragraphs here. Multiple. Let's see. Okay, so Frank thinks Paul is intimidated by his friendship, and he's unhappy about it. So first off, so Dolores is meeting Frank. So Frank is Dolores' ex-husband. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
And Paul, who is Dolores' new boyfriend, is jealous of Frank and her relationship.
Yeah, that's kind of the speculation. I think that's a correct read of.
But he's saying, "Oh, I'm cool with it." Paul seems to be like kind of gaslighting the whole situation. Like, "Oh no, I'm cool. I'm just saying it's weird that you're friends with your ex-boyfriend," kind of thing.
Yeah. And so for context on this that you wouldn't have, Frank and Dolores have a very friendly relationship that we've seen for
it seemed really reasonable at the restaurant, at least.
Yeah, like they were like best friends, and Dolores's like previous boyfriend David, Frank was like super close with them, and after like Dolores and David broke up, Frank even lived with David for a while too, like after surgery, and like David would wipe his ass, like that sort of closeness. So for it to have this kind of like this wedge come in with like Paulie kind of separating out Dolores and Frank are
Paulie
trying to
stubbornly refuses to wipe his ass. It's
yeah,
really, it's really
Not
mean.
cool. Be a bro. Wipe a friend's
Yeah.
ass.
yeah. But yeah, it does like make an impact on their like the relationship between Frank and Dolores and like the family dynamic. And
Mhm.
like I understand why Frank is upset about that, and I also understand why people might not be sympathetic towards Frank for being upset about that, because he was ultimately the one that blew up their family by cheating like way back in the day. So
Mhm.
but yeah, I thought that this was like an interesting moment that had been brewing.
Yeah. Also, Frank, obviously bisexual, and sorry to keep making your Bravo podcast gay, but like, I mean, he's like overly tanned. He's got like the most manicured beard I've ever seen, and he's obviously roided to the gills, and he only does upper body stuff.
Yeah,
Like this is every single guy at my local leather bar.
Well, and then he rolls up dressed like
Yeah,
he came from
yeah,
Leather
exactly.
Bar.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
which Dolores immediately mocks him for by doing
which is
YMCA gestures.
yeah, yes, he is very Glenn Hughes from the Village People. Yes.
Yeah, they only make the Village People jokes when you show up dressed like a San Francisco Leatherman. They never do it when you're wearing a cop uniform.
yeah.
You know what? Although
No, that's the
we
plot
should,
of Cruising.
we should, yeah.
That's the plot of Cruising.
That movie is something else. I actually watched that like last year, and
I love Cruising.
it's
Freaking rules.
it is it is like overly gay, and I say that as like I'm gayer than a gay dollar bill, so is really wonderful.
Yeah.
I think like it's interesting. Like I don't know. I think a lot of the men in Bravo in general, but like specifically in New Jersey, would like be uncomfortable with that being projected on them. Like
Mhm.
the vibe in like
people who still
the
call
house
themselves
husbands.
metrosexual.
Yeah, they
that,
probably still say that in that group.
Yeah.
They are in that like very
the husbands of like Real Housewives of New Jersey give off like big time like cop vibes. Like
they'll wear like
of them.
tribal t-shirts.
A couple of
and
them
stuff.
for sure. Yeah.
But I feel like Frank is someone that really bucks the image that he like, or at least that sort of that really like toxic male image that he puts off. He's like very emotionally like in touch and very like secure in who he is.
Yeah, I actually wrote here that Frank seems like a non-toxic type of guy. I hope I'm not wrong. I hope he hasn't done some terrible stuff in the show before.
That's my read on him from like since I first started watching him as well. Like for a lot of the like men within New Jersey, like I say, they do have moments where they kind of deviate from what you'd expect given the vibes that they are putting off. They still have very like toxic traits, especially like if you think about how Joe Gorga talks about his daughter. It's very kind of like a toxic way of being like, oh, she better not bring a boy home. Like it gives off like no one's gonna fuck her but me, like vibes.
That's protective father. Yep, he's mine. Frank seems cool though. I like Frank.
Yeah, I've always liked Frank. I've often spoken his favor. It doesn't mean that he's always like done great things, but I think that he's like a funny dude who is a little more open and in touch with his feelings, like you said, Craig, and than other guys are. And I liked this scene because I felt like he was kind of struggling to articulate what he wants from Dolores because he's not even quite sure what it is. Like he feels like he's lost something. He lost his mother, and he's afraid that his long-standing closeness with Dolores is kind of slipping through his fingers, and I think he's kind of grasping to try to figure out what exactly he wants from her, like concretely. I don't think he can really articulate it that well. I think he's just kind of trying to explain this feeling of loss that he has. In terms of like imagery, I do like that while he's talking about this, we get a little cut to him using a spoon to try to grasp this giant fried thing on a plate, like, just like the wrong implement for the task. You're not going to grasp it that way. And yeah, that's that plus him like showing up just kind of breathless off his motorbike, you know, in a beater, like looking like very vulnerable, was like real Frank shit. Like this was a good moment if you feel kind of sensitive to Frank, to like relate to his situation. Not that Dolores has done anything wrong, because I don't think she has. Dolores has done nothing wrong.
Absolutely not.
But that's the thing. It's not Frank versus Dolores. It's just like Frank trying to articulate his feelings about their evolving relationship.
And I think credit needs to go to like both of them for like being able to have the healthy kind of dialogue that they do have, where like Dolores is like feels comfortable enough with Frank that she can be like, you know what? No, Frank, this is like, you know, this is how I'm feeling. These are the boundaries that I would like to set. And like, where do we go from there? Like, I think even if you're in a long-term relationship with someone, like getting to that level of, you know, having that kind of healthy dialogue and communication, that's challenging. It's challenging to build that forum. And that's something that you work very hard to like to have. And the fact that they are able to maintain that after being like divorced is like very remarkable. So I think that like really speaks to, you know, both of them. Not all the credit doesn't go to Frank, all the credit doesn't go to Dolores. I think like this is just a relationship that I really love seeing on this show.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, they seem to have a good grasp on what it takes to have an adult relationship. Maybe not so much her boyfriend. He seems like the jealous type from the brief stuff it showed.
Yeah. Now there's cop vibes. That's
yeah. Paul. Yeah, big time cop vibes. 100%.
Do you have any other highlights from this?
Oh, we're doing highlights. Oh, I thought I was doing general impressions. Yeah. I've got a bunch of highlights. All right.
It's just a different way to say
let's jump.
it.
Oh, fair enough. Let's see. So, starting out the episode, like, can you perhaps provide me some context with the Ireland thing? Because so Danielle said she was unhappy coming back from Ireland because all the girls were mean to her, and quote, mean girls times a million. I don't know the math on that, but sounds bad.
Checks out.
Yeah. She called Margaret a rat. What did she call Margaret a rat for doing?
Oh, she called Rachel.
Michelle,
Rachel.
Rachel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Though it's understandable you get mixed up because Rachel has tried to cozy herself up to Margaret so much that she's just become like an extension of her body almost at this point.
Gotcha. Interesting. So why was she a rat to her?
So there was like a conversation that happened like earlier in the season just about like Margaret having an arsenal of information on the other girls in the group. And,
which she does. She's like the J. Edgar Hoover of this group. She is absolutely keeping dossiers on everyone.
Oh man, that's some Garrick shit right there. That is some Garrick shit right there. Let's circle back there. Yeah.
Yeah. And so Rachel immediately went and just spilled the beans to Margaret. And so Danielle called her a rat because she ratted her out.
That's fair.
And
that's
apparently in like Italian culture, which is like a common refrain on New Jersey.
Yeah,
I'm not like trying to specifically like stereotype.
I actually just watched The Sopranos, so I felt very prepared for this, but I still was not.
Yeah, so that's a big deal. That means like you couldn't call anyone a worse insult according to the Real Housewives of New Jersey.
That makes sense. Yeah, and I feel like the majority of these women are Italian or, you know, at least partially. Yeah, there was the one Turkish lady, I think, who was doing the henna tattoos thing.
Yeah, Jen Aiden,
Yeah. But other than that, the women were very like indistinguishable from the women on The Sopranos.
Yeah.
It was interesting how like, you know, much fiction played into real life there.
Yeah, it shows how much The Sopranos got right too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, with like, you know, like the animal print pants and shit like that. I'm like, what? People do wear that. Okay, well, you know, I guess I'm wrong. Let's see, what else do I have here? So Rachel and her husband John are trying to or Rachel's trying to adopt John's kid, her stepson, right? Who's been
Yeah.
living with them for a while. I really liked this whole thing. This whole sequence made both of these people seem really nice. I don't know much about John, but anyone who's that quiet is either like incredibly dumb, or he's just got like accounting sheets going in his head. So he's one or the other. He's not of average intelligence, though. I know that much.
Yeah.
He seems nice, though. He seems nice from what we had here, just kind of a little detached.
Yeah, we don't see a lot. We haven't seen a lot of him. So
Mhm.
Rachel is a new housewife this
Okay.
season. But yeah, I was interested in this adoption scene as well. Like mostly in the fact that she was surprised at the fact that they would have to like make an attempt to inform the bio mom that there was
Yeah,
an adoption. Like that seems like pretty expected
it is, but at the same
protocol.
time, there's like abandonment clauses in some states and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
California definitely has some of the craziest laws on the book. So, oh no, I'm sorry, this is New Jersey, isn't it? We're in New Jersey
Yeah,
now,
this is New
which
Jersey.
I don't
But
know about that at
yeah,
all. Yeah.
also like interesting timing that they like this isn't something that she, has been on the show for years and has decided to adopt as part of her personal story. But, first season coming on the show, I'm going to make like a point of doing this as a story. The skeptic in me is like, okay, you're trying to like earn some grace from the viewers. You're trying to like, be framed as a good person and
Mhm.
using your kid as like a chess piece
Ugh.
because you don't have another storyline, which feels like it could potentially be icky. Not to say that, she hasn't always intended on doing this or
Mhm.
like that she does like anything about that relationship specifically. Just the timing. I would wait till season 2 to do this if
That's a
I
good point.
if I'm
Or
being
like
honest.
it's almost surprising they didn't put these wheels into motion before the show or anything.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
that does.
say
Now
this
that
for
you
your
mention it, seems
second season
sus. Yeah,
or
yeah,
like get the ball in motion before you start rolling.
yeah. Sus. Let's see. Next we have the Jennifer scene, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
It's in the lingerie.
Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
lingerie. So apparently her daughter can't stop telling her how she needs to wear lingerie for
For daddy.
daddy. Um, it's totally cool to teach your kids about sex and give them sex education, but like it's also cool to teach them to never say shit like that ever,
Yeah.
ever. Because that's weird. It's yeah, it just like made me deeply, deeply uncomfortable, especially since like Jennifer brings it up and then the husband comes in and the kid brings it up again and she's like, why are you talking about that? And I'm like, you just brought it up. So either the
Yeah.
editing was wonky or she is just like, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think like uh Jennifer is trying to build up her own, not necessarily an arsenal, but like just get some ammunition to come at Margaret because there has been this long standing like this war, and she blames Margaret for her like 9-year-old wanting to be a love counselor because Margaret exposed,
What's wrong with that?
a
That's the weird thing, is that she picks up on the fact that Olivia, her daughter, said she wants to be a love counselor as the proof that she's been exposed to things she shouldn't be, instead of picking up on the fact that she's saying like you should wear lingerie to stop daddy from cheating as
yeah.
the proof that she's been exposed to toxic bullshit. Like,
She like
why are you focusing on the wanting to be a counselor thing? That's not the thing that's wrong.
No, yeah. Why does she want to be a counselor? Maybe look at her material conditions. Like, what does she actually observe in her life that would make her think she needs to fix people's relationships? No one
Right.
I
wants
do.
to be a marriage counselor at 9 years old unless they see
Yeah.
a shitty marriage.
I do, yeah, I do understand how that would be alarming. Like
Hmm.
her being like, "Oh, I need to do this so that I can like fix mommy and daddy." Like,
Hmm.
yeah, obviously that would be very alarming to hear
Sure,
from your
yeah.
child.
Yeah.
So, like, I can see how that is, something that raises flags, and her wanting to kind of gather this so that she can, come at Margaret with some receipts about the damage that she has done, not just to her relationship but to her children, which
Hmm.
are typically thought as off
It
limits
should be.
within
Yeah.
Housewives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's fucked.
So I can kind of see where this was motivated. But yeah,
Sure.
that's a great point that she picks up on this, aspiration to be a counselor as being something that is, awful, but, it makes a joke of the, like, oh, or you need to wear lingerie for daddy.
Yeah. But then, I was thinking at that point, this marriage has to be terrible. And then the next scene proves it when Jennifer talks to her husband, Bill, and she's like, have you been spending time with the kids? And he's like, yeah, pretty much not. I've been working. Apparently he's a plastic surgeon, I think, or something like that.
Yeah. I like where he's like, I get home from caring for people all day. And I'm like, oh,
it's elective surgery. Yeah. You can literally say no. They'll go somewhere else.
I'm not saying it's not a tough job, but don't act like you're at hospice care.
And also,
don't act like you're caring for dying people. Yeah. Like, come on.
And he's like, yeah, I've been working all these nights and weekends. And I'm like, I mean, unless he's an emergency plastic surgeon, which is a very real thing. But, I don't think that's... No, because he has like a monogrammed scrubs. And I'm like, yeah,
and he
emergency,
wears it all the time.
No, yeah. So, but he seems very distant. And I mean, I feel like they have a social contract that neither of them really understands at all. Like, their marriage means very different things to the both of them, I think. Like, Bill obviously just wants a trophy wife who's a housewife, takes care of the kids, so he can go do whatever the fuck he does. And then she seems to actually want a husband, but also want the lifestyle that him working all the time provides. So I feel like the two of them really, really need therapy. And then she's like, maybe we should go to therapy. And he's like, about this? No. And I'm like, wow, this sucks. That's like, in a way, I think a form of gaslighting.
Yeah. They did go to therapy earlier in the season. They did. But it's like, it just was just Jen ranting and ranting, and Bill just sitting there refusing to interact whatsoever.
Right. And also,
no movement made.
Therapy on camera is not real therapy. Let's be honest. Like,
oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like if you put me on camera in my therapist's office, I would not get real help because I would not say real things.
Oh yeah, it's definitely like on Housewives, it is used as like a storytelling device or a way to like forward the plot. So for sure, I can see how he didn't find that like a meaningful way to like engage in bettering his relationship for sure.
Yeah. Next we got Teresa. Teresa looks like $1 million. She has obviously like had work done, but it's like very good work, at least on her body. Her face is starting to show a lot of signs, but like her ass for a woman her age, amazing. Let's see what else. Dad calls, and he's like the most Italian man in the show by far. His name is Joe. I'm surprised he's not a Joey. I think they're divorced, it sounds like, because she says he can't come or something. Or, no, not cum. I'm sorry. Like he can't like attend something. Like her.
He is a fugitive.
Oh, he's a fugitive. Really?
He's not a fugitive. I think he's living in the Bahamas right now.
So, because he was wearing like a
so
yellow
this isn't her
vest.
dad. This is her ex-husband.
Okay.
It's her kid's dad.
Yeah, I'm sorry, kid's dad. Yeah. Because they're getting a dress fitting or something at this point.
Yeah, so he's living in the Bahamas because he's been deported. Because
he's an Italian citizen. Though lived like almost his whole life in America.
That's why he's so fucking Italian. Beautiful. Called it.
Both Teresa and Joe spent time in prison for tax fraud, and then he got deported because he like had never applied for his American citizenship, even though he'd been in the country since like he was like 2 years old.
Wow, wild. He should have been a naturalized citizen, but I guess with the law and everything, they probably wanted to fuck him over somehow.
Yeah,
wild.
I get the feeling he was being made an example of.
Yeah. Another note I had here, for some reason the 12-year-old daughter here looks like she's like the oldest daughter of them all. It's very unsettling.
Yeah, when she says like I'm 12, I'm like, what?
Yeah, I'm like 16? No, you're like the old daughter. Like that's not right. So after that we go to Margaret, who's getting lunch with her mom and Lexi's mom. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. These two women look like carbon copies of their mothers, and they act like carbon
Yeah.
copies of their mothers. It's
Oh,
very,
yeah.
very strange. So she says she's been bringing in her mom to help out with Lexi's kid Nino because Lexi is separated, and Nino was the kid I think from the very beginning of the episode or something.
Yeah. Margaret's Joe like gives direction on like peeing in the toilet too.
Excellent. We love
Right,
that.
aim down, not up. I
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right. That's right. That's right. That was
Very
one of the
wise
things
advice,
first things in the episode. I'm like, what? Oh, okay.
I think this kid's like 9.
I realized I've
like,
been doing it all
definitely
wrong.
like
It was a big revelation for me.
So the ladies get their food and they just talk about how Teresa is nasty to Melissa and Joe specifically. Why is Teresa nasty to Melissa and Joe? Is there a reason for that?
She's not.
Oh, she's not.
Maybe this is the tree hugger in me, but
Uh-huh.
like she's not. This is like Joe and Melissa like playing the victim,
Mhm.
and Margaret like siding with them for the purposes like for strategic purposes, because like that's the best place for her to align because she's traditionally been
Okay.
like at odds.
Mhm.
And Lexi like glomming onto this because Lexi is just been introduced and is not even like a friend of cast member here.
Mhm.
I don't think Teresa has done anything wrong within this context of the situation. And like, yeah, I think barely anything. We're gonna get like blown up on Instagram for if anyone listens to this and hears me say this, because Melissa fans are gonna come at me. But no, Teresa's done nothing wrong.
Hashtag
No, I agree.
Teresa did nothing wrong. We got
I
it.
agree. I mean, we could go into the weeds of like all the supposed slights going back years or whatever involving multiple members of the family, but there's no need to because it just boils down to gamesmanship. And like you said, Greg, I think Melissa and Joe want to be the victims of this situation, so they've decided they're going to be, and that's what it boils down to for me.
I feel like a lot of these controversies on here aren't so much like real as they are just like very manufactured in like, in a very like borderline personality disorder kind of way, where it's just like you just build a case of evidence of like perceived little slights here and there until like this person's definitely against me and they're my enemy.
Yeah,
there's a ton of that in this show.
It's strategy, like it's strategic use, and like when I was joking about like people on Instagram like coming after me, I'm not like fully joking because like there probably will be people. This is like Teresa and Melissa are like, they are two characters that like there are battle lines drawn from like years and years, and like it is the most like toxic thing about the Housewives fan base is like Melissa fans versus Teresa fans like constantly like clashing. And so that's actually one of the things that I find really interesting about Real Housewives of New Jersey. I've mentioned on previous episodes, but like um Teresa is the sister of Joe, who is Melissa's husband. So yeah, so there's like real like family drama that like a whole fandom has like glommed onto and chosen side, which I think is like super interesting about New Jersey, because like you see fan bases like get divided in battle across various franchises, but this is one that is like it really feels like you're taking sides in like in family drama that is like,
because like to bring it back to Star Trek, like even if someone DS9's obviously my favorite, but even if someone's like I like Voyager or I like TNG, in the end we're all just dorks, so it doesn't matter. I like them.
Yeah. Like I feel like this would be almost like if there was kind of a nearly equal size fan base that was so dedicated to the idea that Abrams Trek is better than the canon like track, or like I don't know, I guess a more real world example that you see is like people that are very dismissive of the newest iteration of Star Trek, like
Mhm.
think that it's not real Trek.
Yeah.
So it's kind of got that level of toxicity to it, where people are just like immovable in their like beliefs that they are correct about this and that they have, you know, the perfect read on the situation.
Wild. What else? Next, we got Melissa, whose daughter is on the honor roll. She's about 17, and her meathead dad loves her a lot. This guy has terrible vibes, but he's really nice to his family. But this guy just like has terrible gym rat vibes. I can't really explain it other than that, but I don't know. Just there's something about him. I do not trust this man. Suddenly there's a lot of beeping, and he's like, "Who's that?" The dad says, "Who's that?" And then they go outside, and they guess what? They bought their kid a Porsche Cayenne, which is like $100,000 vehicle. Cool.
Yeah.
So you know, I'm not begrudging success by any means, but like, and I'm all about taking care of your family, but that represents the wealth of like 6 full years of minimum wage labor, which I think is excessive for someone who is not even old enough to have worked for 6 years.
Yeah.
I mean, but I guess
Yeah.
like some people are trying to change the labor laws to where she could have worked for 6 years right now.
Yeah.
But so yeah, and also it's a Porsche, and if anyone's ever driven a Porsche, it's so much in maintenance. It's, even if you know cars really well, and I'm assuming a 17-year-old privileged girl does not know German cars well. So this is just like a bad idea in my opinion. But you know, it's their money; they can waste it how they want. Mom says she used to drive a Toyota, as though that's a bad car. And then the grandma says she used to drive an old Chevy. And I'm thinking all Chevys were old, like back when you were young. So yeah.
They just called them Chevys back
Yeah,
then.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, of course it's old grandma. You are. Yeah, but I mean, the dad did, even though he has these terrible, malicious vibes to the outside world, he does seem to love his family a lot. Like, he's the kind of guy who would, like, kill for his family, but also kill for other reasons, I think.
Yeah,
or
he's
kill,
the kind of
kill
guy who
his
would
family.
be eager to kill.
Yeah, yeah, he'd like, yeah, if someone, like, if, like, a burglar came into his home, he'd be like, it's time.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah,
Here we
go. Yeah. So Melissa talks about what they did in Ireland and tells her husband when they were in a place, and they do this flashback, and I had to pause because I was laughing so hard. She apparently they were like drawing things on a wall, and she drew some stick figures that like represented his family coming from Italy or something, and she cried about the stick figures. And I don't know the context behind this,
good.
but her
So
crying at stick figures for just 3 seconds like just had me dying.
It was amazing. Even in context.
Yeah.
The context was literally Melissa just being like, and this represents your family. And then as soon as she pronounces the word family, she can't stop crying. and then Teresa starts crying too.
and they are literal stick figures.
They're literal stick figures with like an Italian flag roughly drawn behind them.
And it's like they rented out this place where they let you draw on the walls like a kid, and they drew on the walls worse than a kid does. It's amazing. I was just very confused on like who let them do that, why did they do that? There was just so many questions. But whatever producer is like, hey, you're gonna draw on a wall and then talk about it, that person's a fucking genius.
Yeah.
They like bled a stone and got like magic gold water. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the highlight for this entire experience for me. I'm not gonna lie. It's just her crying at stick figures. Then I had all my Frank notes. Oh, a note I had about Frank. As soon as Frank entered the restaurant and I saw like there was a waiter in the background, everyone on the show is like maximum like 5'6" or 5'7", right? Like
Yeah,
this seems like a
The
very
dudes
short show.
The dudes are especially very short.
Yeah,
generally.
yeah.
Like both Joe and Frank seem to be like very tiny guys.
Yeah, and
I mean, in height wise.
yeah, it didn't really click to me until this. Like Vanderpump Rules, I think has a lot more variation, but especially on like this Housewives in New Jersey, like I saw just the waiter in the background. I'm like, that person is like a good foot taller than everyone else at the table. Like it just like disarmed me for a sec. And we have Frank. We love Frank. Go Frank. Team Frank. Um, then we get to the crux of the episode, which is what they've been talking about the whole time, the bridal shower. And it kind of comes and goes back and forth between that and Teresa in a car. And Teresa's getting a call from her husband who says they're going to invite everything to their thing except for Melissa and Joe.
Yeah,
So
this was a big moment.
Yeah.
They it was kind of the classic like hot mic moment that
yeah,
you get.
which I didn't believe for a second. Like, oh, they're recording, and he's like, oh, really? And hangs up. I'm like,
Yeah.
you're on a reality show, buddy. Come on, don't play dumb unless you really are that dumb, and then that's funny. But yeah, come on. But yeah, so I'm guessing that was a big kind of a split, another big chasm in the Teresa Melissa division.
Yeah, I've definitely seen a lot like Teresa and Louis getting a lot of heat for this moment online. Like, and obviously it wasn't completely innocent and it was a very like awkward moment, but there have been like way more damning like hot mic moments. Like no one's under the illusion that like no one's hiding anything from the cameras. So
Right.
like it's really a lot of nothing. And I think like Teresa is not the most like cunning or strategic or like articulate housewife in the world, and for her to just be like, oh, the cameras are on, right? It isn't like, I don't know, I feel like, yeah, you could read it to be like, oh, you shouldn't have said that, but like I felt like, yeah, I don't know, it just seemed like um it just seemed like her being like, okay, well, the cameras are on, so now that you've said that, this is going to be like
A thing.
a big deal. This
Yeah.
is not something that we had like agreed upon. And then she immediately goes and kind of like corrects it, like, you're inviting these people, you're inviting everyone. And then I think like what is something that you could probably latch onto more is when her daughter Melania is like, well, why would we invite them? Like, I think that is more indicative of like the family dynamic, and that is like maybe a bit more damning than like Louis being like, oh, I'm not going to invite them, because he could have even been trying to express like, I'm not going to invite them yet because we haven't really discussed this. But
right.
yeah, I don't know.
Also, I think Louis has earned the right to be a bit of a dick after like successive episodes of pathetically prostrating himself before Joe and Melissa and be like,
stuck in the snake pit.
Yeah, and them just being like stop it, like we don't want to like reconcile. That's not what we want to do. And after he's done that so much, yeah, let him be a bit, let him be a dick, let him be jokerfied, let him like let him go off on them. It'll be funny too, because he tried to like awkwardly misuse therapy speak for a couple episodes to try to win them over. Now let him awkwardly misuse therapy speak to go in like attack mode and call them out as like toxic energy vampires or something. That'll be hilarious. I want to see that happen.
So I gotta ask, where do you two fall on the Teresa Melissa split?
I honestly,
Craig's made it clear.
Yeah, I'm honestly like, I
think
really
he used the
like
term tree
Teresa.
hugger.
Yeah, that's what we call ourselves. That's what our tribe calls ourselves.
Fair.
But yeah, no, I do like, I find like if I'm watching with my heart and just like I feel like I empathize more with Teresa. I feel like she comes across as more honest on screen, and I think she's just been in like an iconic presence within like the housewife franchises that like I want to see her continue to be on screen. And like I also like very much appreciate what Melissa and Joe bring to the table. Like
Mhm.
I love a villain. I love that they are like constantly like making themselves as like to be victims in order to like agitate things. I think that's like essential to the dynamic of what Real Housewives of New Jersey is. And if they weren't there, they would need to make some big changes to the show. So like
Hmm.
it's not to say that I don't appreciate what they have to bring. I just think like instinctually I buy into like Teresa's arc as like something that, you know, brings out that feeling of me like wanting to ride for her, I guess. And like she's not always right. Like she is very
Mhm.
often wrong. And that's just part of like what you get when you're following these shows for a really long time. Like
Mhm.
if you're riding for someone, you see them become a villain and like, you know, be wrong and have to deal with the consequences of being wrong and have to repair relationships and just like be bad or just like love being bad at certain points. And
Hmm.
I think we've seen Teresa do all those things. And I think that she's like a very dynamic housewife as a result. Like we saw, it wasn't maybe this last season or the season before where it just opens up strong out of the gate. Teresa's like spreading rumors about like Jackie and her husband like having an affair, and like
Mhm.
she just kind of like owns that role. Like I think she's very dynamic. She can play a lot of different characters on the series, or she can play a lot of different like roles
Mhm.
throughout the franchise. And so I really appreciate Teresa, and I've talked emphatically about Teresa for like the past 3 minutes. So I think, you know, you get a sense where I stand for her. I
Fair. Fair.
ride for her. I would feel her loss if she was like off the show a lot more than I would Melissa.
Fair. How about you, Dylan?
Yeah, I maybe don't share as much of Craig's passion, but I haven't followed the show as long as he has.
Fair.
Craig's
Fair.
invested a lot more into it, I think, and
Mm.
so I totally get that, and that's like kind of where I'm coming from too, just in the sense that Teresa seems more likable because she's more like of a sloppy presence on camera. So there's like it feels more relatably human,
Fair. Fair.
whereas I'm just irritated a little bit by Joe and Melissa's like urban homesteader act where they just like want to be like locked up in their castle and us against the world. We're always right and we're always on the defense against everybody else who wants to attack us kind of attitude that I just don't really have much time for.
Fair.
Yeah, I
Fair.
think one thing that's like particularly irritating that you see in like certain characters on reality TV is like when they give off the vibe that they think they're getting one over on the audience, like that
Mm.
they think that they have like tricked the audience into believing they are this one thing. And that is something that, you know, I think Melissa and Joe like really embody. And I think
Mhm.
they are actually successful in it from what I read on comments. Like people like buy into what they're selling. And like I don't like, I think if you are going to ride for Melissa and Joe, you need to buy into what they are selling. Whereas if you're going to ride for Teresa, you just need to accept her as this like imperfect like person that, you know, is going to like make mistakes and be bad and like, you know, but also have really like warm and good moments.
Mhm.
And I think that's like it's a lot easier sell for me because, you know, when Teresa's bad, she's not like selling this like good, you know, this good guy
Mhm.
uh, perspective. So that's really interesting. But what one thing that's like particularly interesting about their relationship is like they, you know, both like Teresa's kids and Joe and Melissa's kids
Mhm.
all seem like relatively like good. Like they are seem like good kids in a way that you don't see like you see some like shitty like housewife children. And you know, for the most part these kids all seem like really grounded, and given the like the ongoing tension between the family members and
Mhm.
this kind of like toxic dynamic that they have, that's really surprising. And I kind of like I like what it speaks to in both cases about them as people, even,
Mhm.
and I don't really understand even where it comes from on the Melissa and Joe side because I
Money.
don't really
Like, yeah,
yeah
privilege, money. It
yeah
helps.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
yeah, and then I guess all we have in the episode is Teresa's bridal shower at the end there. I found this to be a really kind of unfulfilling end. It was kind of rambling. It didn't really have like any narrative tie up for me. And so I just, yeah, at the end of this, I was like, all right. So Melissa feels attacked at Teresa's bridal shower, even though she wasn't going to be invited. Maybe she should feel attacked. But other than that, it was just kind of okay. I guess that's like the teaser for the next thing. So yeah, it was ultimately I didn't feel this had as much of like a point or a narrative structure to Vanderpump Rules. It wasn't. I couldn't find it really saying anything outside of a few moments, and then the crying at the stick figures again, just fabulous. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was an interesting exercise in cultural anthropology to see people who, you know, I'm never going to be exposed to except when I go visit my family and you know spend a weekend on the shore. It's yeah, it's wild to me.
Yeah, I think like this episode, you know, there's a lot of episodes like this in over the course of the season
Mhm.
where, you know, you're not going to get much out of it if you're just jumping in. I think like um you know, to bring up Star Trek again, like I
Mhm.
think Star Trek, when you're watching like really great Star Trek, it excels at like encapsulating a story within a like an episode and really exploring it, like having very like strongly defined like problems that it is
Mhm.
looking at, whereas like Housewives is kind of the opposite. Like I think like you can watch a really great episode of Star Trek and a really or like a really shitty episode of Star Trek, and you know that it you'll still kind of get a sense of what it is, and they don't have the same like impact on each other,
Mhm.
whereas you know a shitty episode of Housewives or like a less fulfilling episode of Housewives, you know, it is way more rich if you've got like, you know, years of watching Housewives.
Context.
Like
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can, yeah, you can read a lot. You don't need the same like context to enjoy really good Star Trek, I
And
think.
I think too, like the narrative structure, like the difference of how they're built as shows is like drastically different too. So I don't think you can really build a similar narrative in any meaningful way because there's so many moving parts of like the reality thing. Because every different person has a story that has to be focused on at some time if they are a character. Whereas you can just ignore
Yeah,
people when you're writing stuff. In a way, it's like with you know Star Trek and really anything scripted, they're building something out of like clay, whereas like in reality television, they're chipping away at stone until they get the sculpture that they want. You know?
yeah. And I think like what is interesting is like structurally, and you brought this up before, like Housewives is an ensemble and Star Trek also
Absolutely,
is an ensemble.
especially
So
DS9.
like
Yeah.
yeah, and like or especially like Trek of that era, like
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Next
Voyager,
Generation,
Next Generation. Yeah,
Enterprise,
absolutely.
Voyager, yeah, they're all, you know, the bridge crew like features so like prominently, and it is, but it is often like them versus external threats or
Right.
external
Right.
like challenges, and how they like coalesce as a group to like, you know, use their strengths
Hmm.
to solve the problem or overcome the challenge. Whereas like Housewives, it's kind of the opposite. It's usually an internal problem
Yeah.
or sometimes external, but like how do we, you know, pit each other against each other in order to like blow this up and like leverage it for our own personal. It's
Hmm.
you know, a lot more it's selfish track.
Yeah, and so to speak to that, like originally Gene Roddenberry, who created Star Trek, a lot of you know Trekkies talk about Gene's vision and how like newer Star Trek doesn't fit Gene's vision, but it never really has since the Next Generation because Gene's vision was that you would have episodes that were you know ethical dilemmas, but the one main thing is the crew never like interacted in a negative way, and there was never any drama between the crew, which is the exact opposite of something like this. But at the same time, like once you got into TNG DS9, that's basically all it became, because you know what, that's interesting storytelling. Is interpersonal dramas combined with other things. So
it is interesting how like distinct Trek of that era is versus the original series, because like the Kirk, Spock, McCoy like friendship dynamic that drives the original series and the original series movies, I think is so strong. It doesn't like the crew doesn't like play as prominently as the crew does in Next Generation or anything that kind of follows it. No, that's interesting, and I don't think that there's any like Housewives series that kind of comes close to what you see in the original series. So like when I was trying to think about how we're juxtaposing Housewives against Star Trek, I couldn't think of any real parallels with the original series, but I did see a lot with the second wave Star Trek.
Yeah, like I feel like the only way you could even try to build a similar narrative is put like the three housewives that like each other the most on a road trip, and then that might be like original Star Trek.
Yeah.
But other than that, like, it's just no. The narrative structures just don't really fit each other at all. But they're just entirely separate things for entirely separate people, and sometimes the same people.
Yeah.
What I love, I think, about the Housewives shows structurally is that they're both extremely dense in content and extremely meandering, and I like that.
Yes,
it's like there's narratives everywhere being pulled out of everything, but every attempt to establish a grand narrative kind of gets undermined by the behaviors of the people.
Right.
So it's like everything's a story, but nothing works as a story at the same time.
Right.
And I love the way that it shows how easy it is to find storylines, but how hard it is to focus them when you've got like an actual human element that you're trying to wrangle in there.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That's one of the things that's so interesting to me.
Indeed.
Dylan, did you have any other, or did you have any highlights that you wanted to talk about from New Jersey?
We basically covered it all.
Sorry, I write way too much, guys. I apologize.
No,
I literally recap the entire episode. If you've listened to Soul Trek before, this is exactly what I do there, and that's why we have 4-hour-long episodes.
Yeah, that's totally cool. I just wanted to point out that I like that Teresa calls her vagina Chocolina, kind of joining Danielle's tradition.
Amazing.
Of having very creative words to describe your own anatomy. I really enjoy that.
Awesome. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much for doing this, Brit. Do you want to plug your show and let everyone know where they can find you, especially the Melissa fans who might want to come after you?
Oh yeah, come after me anytime. I don't care. I love the haters. I will either make you like me or eventually block you. It's that easy. Yeah. So I make Star Trek merch. It's very gay. It's very communist. It's very fun and funny. That's over at soytrek.com. And also I have a podcast called, guess what? Soy Trek. You can just find that wherever you get podcasts. If you like long form Star Trek, where I break down every single thing about Star Trek in an episode of Star Trek with a funny idiot vegan guy. You might like it, but probably not. I don't care.
Awesome. Dylan, want to let everyone know where they can find you?
You can hear me talking about horror movies on my podcast, Mind Over Splatter. If you want to find a bit of an overlap, you could look for the Hellraiser episode where I talk about Andrew Robinson and about...
Isn't Jeffrey Combs in there too? Or
is Jeffrey Combs in there?
No. He's in never mind. I don't.
He's in
He should be in everything.
Sure.
Yeah, he's in a lot of horror movies.
Another
Castle
overlap is I think her name's Terry Farrell, who plays somebody in
She's the
star of Hellraiser 3.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And I also talk in the Hellraiser episode about my experiences with Rev, the drink I'm drinking tonight. So that just happens to work out that way. And getting drunk on that and watching Hellraiser Inferno at like age 14.
If I could make a recommendation for a crossover between horror and Star Trek, Jeffrey Combs in Castle Freak, which is from I think like 1990.
Oh yeah,
pretty awesome. Pretty awesome movie.
I've heard of it.
It's a really good like weird body horror. Very interesting, like dark pacing. Like I like it a lot. I think if you're into horror, you'd probably like it.
Nice. Yeah. You can find me on Substack too, Dylan Ferguson, writing about movies.
Nice.
Awesome. And I've been Craig Midwinter. You can find Bravo Outsider at bravooutsider.com. We're on Instagram at Bravo Outsider, TikTok at Bravo Outsider. We're on Twitter now at Bravo_Outsider as of today.
I'll go at you.
Yeah, and you can listen to us wherever you listen to podcasts or watch us on YouTube. Until next time, we're gonna dip out.